did it ever happen to you that people would ask you to repeat what you just said, not because they couldn't hear you, but because they were incapable of understanding your way of speaking? Or maybe you have asked someone to repeat because you didn't understand what the other person was saying. Maybe because the way they were speaking, the way they were using intonation, the pitch or accent. What happens when someone doesn't understand what we say, although we use the same language? The clearer we articulate, the more effort we put into an effective and clear communication, the more we will avoid judgments and misunderstandings. The more our speech is clear, the better others will understand us. Speech clarity is determined by how fast we speak, the pitch of our voice, the accent. But also by the background noise, the distance from the speaker, our word choice, and the multilingual listening skill of the other person. If we are unable to understand what someone is saying in our language or the target language, it is due to our own selective understanding. With selective understanding, I mean that we unconsciously or consciously don't understand what the other person is saying. Some may call it a tunnel listening in analogy to tunnel view, referring with tunnel listening to the limited auditory perception of the receiver. With selective understanding, I mean the process of people literally selecting what or who they want to understand. Due to the trigger of the different pronunciation, they immediately judge and refuse or accept. When refusing what they hear, they refuse to be flexible in their language perception and understanding and build a wall between them and the other person. They show clear resistance toward what could be a two-way conversation, communication, and a connection. There are many factors that lead to this kind of reaction, which all have their common denominator in not meeting the expectation. When we don't expect that a person speaks in a given way, we react by taking a step back. We analyze, we judge, we don't trust, and refuse actually to understand. Many people, when confronted with someone's strong accent, instead of paying attention to what the person says, focus on how he or she says it. Is the person asking something, making a statement, being angry, upset? What follows is disconnection from the other person and the flow of the communication stops. A person with multilingual skills would not do that. Now, what is a multilingual listening skill? Multilinguals are known to be able to zoom out the non-necessary information and focus on the important one. I quote here Ellen Bialystok. They are known for their capacity of focusing on what is essential. They are able to focus on non-verbal clues as much as on the message. They can ignore the form of it, should the form, intonation, pitch, or accent be hindering the comprehension. What I mean with multilingual listening skills are skills that are closely related with the skill to focus on the essential and the skills that multilinguals acquire naturally, like code switching and code mixing. When we speak with people with whom we share multiple languages, we mix words from all these languages into the conversation. We can also switch from one language to the other depending on the person we speak with. This flexibility allows us to quickly adjust our comprehension to changing accents of the other person. In monolingual settings, where the majority are native speakers, people would simply cease listening when what the other person is saying is not understandable for them, that's to say, doesn't meet their expectations. Monolingual speakers seem not to be able to make the switch from a monolingual listening skill to a multilingual listening skill. They select what they hear, hence selective listening, and focus only on the part of the speech they deem necessary for the conversation to flow. Not so in multilingual settings. When multilinguals have a conversation in a chosen language, they seem to adapt easier to the different accents, the intonations, and the pitches. I have observed that multilinguals who speak several languages up to a great level of fluency, I'm not talking about beginners here, they struggle much less with a variety of accents. In multilingual conversations, people with a very diverse accents manage to communicate with a considerable flow. Something that in a monolingual group would not easily happen. How can we train our multilingual listening skills? First, by embracing the variety of accents in our own languages. We can start by training our understanding of several variants of the same language. For example, for Italian speakers, train our understanding of Italian varieties from diverse regions like Lombardy, Piemonte, Liguria, Veneto, Abruzzo, Puglia, Campania, Sicilia, etc. Or for English speakers, train the ear for the standard British English, as well as the Cockney, Irish, Scottish, Welsh, some US variants like accents from Texas or South Carolina, Brooklyn, or Australian accents, New Zealand ones, etc., like in the video that I linked to in the description by Amy Walker. It is not only about understanding what one says using another accent, but also about learning to avoid being negatively triggered by it. For a lot of people, this requires hard work, as some are or seem really to be wired to criticize other ways of speaking. To say they are influenced from early on to consider a certain accent as funny or weird. Just think about how accents are used in movies to emphasize the social status, the otherness, the credibility of the characters. Another way is to embrace the variety of foreign accents in your language. Once we have trained our auditory perception with accents from native variants of our languages, we can expand to foreign accents in that language. How French pronounce Italian, how Italians pronounce German, how Russians pronounce Spanish, etc., and become familiar with a greater variety of accents. Depending on what languages our friends, colleagues, the community we live in speak, we can train our perception and acceptance towards a variety of ways to speak a given language or a variety of languages. We all can understand accents. We only need to train our auditory perception to recognize and understand deviations from what we usually expect in conversations. The people in the other video I linked to in the description have a great level of fluency in English, but it gives you an idea what a conversation can sound should you sit at a table with people from these countries and with their linguistic backgrounds. A next step is to observe the shift. We usually enjoy conversations where we understand the language, the body language, the gestures, the message in between the lines, reading the air, so to say. For a conversation to be effective, we need other people to use the same words as we do, the same anecdotes and the same metaphors, for example. If we have these conversations in one of our most dominant languages, we can experience them as relaxed, familiar, and easy. They can also be very effective as long as we share the same opinions, values, and beliefs. When we have trained our multilingual listening skills, conversations in our dominant languages with native speakers will still be very pleasant, but there will come a moment where we actually miss the variety of inputs. We might perceive them as boring and tiring because we don't pay much attention on what and how things are said, because we intrinsically assume that we get it. It is important to acknowledge the shift that takes place in our listening skills as to develop ways to stay tuned in whatever conversation we are, to maintain the connection and to actually actively listen. Adapting to different communication styles in multilingual conversations or in conversations in one target language, which is not the native language of all participants, can be tiring at the beginning, but it can also become the new normal and incredibly enriching. I find it fascinating. I know by my own experience and by what I observe among other multilinguals like myself, we thrive in the variety of languages and cultures. And what about you? I would like to know what you think about this topic and what kind of listener you are. Do you make the switch between selective listener to all-embracing listener or multilingual listener? And what kind of conversations do you enjoy the most? Please share with me in the comments here below. And if you like this video, please click subscribe and click the bell to be notified each time I publish a new video.